Hi, everyone. Have you ever thought to yourself, I've seen the movie The Shining and I've read the book The Shining. I wonder what the opera The Shining would be like. Well, wonder no more because an opera of The Shining has been made, and I recently had a chance to see it. It was commissioned and performed by the Minnesota Opera in, I'm not sure if I think it's in St. Paul, but Minneapolis, St. Paul, Minnesota. So we have some friends in Minneapolis, in St. Paul, Minneapolis, St. Paul area, and so we recently went up and had a wonderful weekend with them, and sort of the highlight of the weekend was to attend this opera, which was a lot of fun. Here is what the playbill looked like. The outside, can you see that? The Shining is kind of shiny. The music is by Paul Moravec, and the libretto is by Mark Campbell, based on the book by Stephen King. Here is the cast. I am not going to read through all of the cast, but you can see it there. So what's the opera about? Well, it's based on the book, I think, The Shining. It's been very long since I've read the book, but that is my understanding of it, that it was based on the book more so than the movie. So it has sort of the familiar characters that from the book, the main character Jack Torrance and his wife Wendy, and then his little son Danny. And what the basics of the story? Let me warn you: in opera, there are no spoilers. So if you have not seen The Shining, and you have not read the book, and you do not know the story, and you do not wish to have spoilers, then do not. I recommend you don't watch the video because in opera we really don't do spoilers. So it's pretty much the story is usually outlined actually in the program from beginning to end. So anyway, you've been warned. All right, so anyway, Jack, Wendy, and Danny. So Jack's been having some trouble in his life, I think. The opera, this is based on what the story was told in the opera. And so they've decided to go and be the winter caretakers for a resort out in remote Colorado. And so they go to this old hotel, this big luxury hotel, to winter over there. And throughout the course of the winter, this is high up in the mountains, so it will become extremely remote. So they get warned about this, and Jack, though, really feels like it's an opportunity to work on his, on his writing. He's failed at. He sings throughout in the opera that he has been a failure so far in his life. He feels like he's apparently had a drinking problem, quite a significant drinking problem, and he also has had some violence issues, I think, previously with Danny. That's what the impression I got in the opera anyway, and that although it was apparently somewhat accidental, more so than overtly abusive. But anyway, so they all start out sort of hopeful. The cook meets the little boy Danny before he leaves. The staff, the regular summer staff, is all leaving because it's getting ready to be winter, and he notices in Danny that he senses in Danny that he's sort of a kindred spirit, and that he has what he says, I think it's his mom or his grandmother called the Shining, which is sort of like, I guess, a psychic ability. And so he says, to Danny, you call me, I'll be able to hear you if you call me, and I will help you. I'll come help you. And so with that, they get possession of the hotel and get started in their life, and or in their wintering over there. So through the course of, I won't go into too many details because I think the story's pretty familiar. It's so iconic in sort of our current culture. But there are, the hotel itself has sort of a life of its own. Jack has been told by the manager that, or the staff there before they left for the summer, that he needed to do there was a few critical things he needed to do, and one of the critical things he needed to do was actually manage the boiler of the hotel. And so the boiler in the elevator sort of seems to be like the lifeblood of the life of the hotel. But the hotel contains a lot of I guess you could say spirits of the past that have been at the hotel. And so as the story progresses, we get introduced to these various spirits. There's the previous caretaker who killed his family, his 2 daughters, his wife. There is sort of a lingering masked ball going on with the spirits of previous guests. There's mafia people. There's kind of a decadent senator. All these are spirits in the hotel. So anyway, over the course of the opera, then these spirits become more and more prevalent, and they're calling on Jack to really join them. I think is what they ultimately want, and so he gets more and more drawn into this, and so of course becomes more and more unraveled. Wendy, his wife, see this, as does his son Danny, and ultimately he is actually also haunted by the spirit of his abusive father. And at one point, this sort of spirit comes through the radio, which is their only contact with the outside world. And Jack ends up destroying the radio, so they have no contact with the outside world. So anyway, as things sort of continue to unravel, it becomes clear that Wendy and Danny's life is in danger. Wendy tries to lock Jack up in a freezer, and he ultimately manages to get out of that. And sort of towards the end, Danny, the little kid, his father's, being told to kill him and his son and his wife, and but he gets sort of enough lucidity there at the very end to get Danny to run. The cook, in the meantime, has heard Danny's shining, has heard his psychic message, and has come on a snowmobile. And Danny and Wendy do get away. Jack ends up, getting enough lucidity at that time to let them get away. But then what he does is he lets the boiler overheat, so he doesn't do that little piece of maintenance. And so the spirits of the hotel are screaming at him to fix the boiler, and he actually maintains enough lucidity that he lets the boiler explode and the hotel is destroyed. And so that's how it more or less ends, although there is a little epilogue at the end where Danny and Wendy have they're in some lake, they're at a lakeside sort of relaxing situation, and the cook comes there. I think his name's Halloran. Comes up there, and so you get this idea that they will heal and that they will move on. So my experience of the opera. So I've seen the book. I mean, I've seen the movie and I've read the book. So the opera is not particularly that level of emotion, I don't think. I think that it didn't. I didn't come away from the opera with like a wow moment that I'm remembering right now. I didn't. didn't, there's not an aria that I particularly remember. There's not a piece of music from it that I particularly remember, but I do think it told a really, interesting story and a really human story for being such a supernatural based narrative. It really told a human story. So there's multiple ways though of looking at this. You can look at it strictly supernatural. Like this is a tale where this family goes to this hotel, supernatural forces are at work, and the little kid has a sixth sense, and sort of read it at face value like that. But I think it also works on another couple of different levels. I think it works as Jack's demons, the husband's actual demons that he's wrestling with, that these were maybe psychological demons of his, and the little boy was able to see through that, and that was his shining. He had insight into that, and almost, I thought about this actually during the intermission of the opera, that it really, in a way, it felt like addiction, like maybe because Jack had a drinking problem, and these sort of seemed to me like the demons of addiction, maybe that were haunting him, and actually trying to drive him to destruction, and pretty much succeeding, while his family actually watched that destruction, and were going to be destroyed by it too if they didn't manage to get away. So I thought I thought of that during the opera, and to me, the story also really works with it on that level. And then I thought it could also work on the level of just the macro level, where this is a family, and then these outside forces, the various forces of maybe even society, impacting people and destroying some and not others, because the hotel was not destroying Wendy or even Danny. It was only destroying Jack. So that's sort of how the forces of life sometimes work, where they seem to destroy the same group of people might get exposed to stressors or to pressures, and different people react differently. So whereas some might escape from that unscathed, the situation would destroy someone right beside them or someone right there with them. So, I thought that it kind of worked on that level as well. And then another quick point about it, I think another area that it works in, that I thought of after the opera, was how a person like this hotel, if we think of this hotel as a person, how through its long history that it gathered these negative forces, and that it actually made a home for those negative forces within it. And instead of purging those negative forces, this is things that had happened to the hotel, meaning people who had come to the hotel and stayed at the hotel and done things at the hotel that the hotel then internalized and kept in itself, and ultimately got destroyed by it as well. So I thought that was kind of an interesting way of looking at life, in that the hotel is a person that over the course of their life, if they internalize all the negative and all the bad things that happen to it, they will keep all of those ghosts and demons prisoner inside themselves, just like the hotel did. And at the end of the day, that's what they would be consumed by. So I thought that was real interesting. So in all, it was an enjoyable weekend with our friends in Minneapolis, St. Paul. The Minnesota Opera was very good. It exceeded my expectations as far as just the level of production was the way they did the hotel, and the way they moved around the rooms, because this is a big hotel that's hard to do on a stage, and they really pulled that off really well. I thought the scenery and the way that they placed us in that hotel, and the way we felt that, I felt they did a really good job with that. So I think I'll stop with that. Until next time, see you soon. Bye.